The NFL draft is finally here. So today we're going to be drafting the top tight ends in the 2022 class. Who should you target earlier in your drafts, and who's maybe a late round sleeper that you should consider? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Magdziuk.
Welcome into the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, everybody. I am Kate Magdziuk. You could follow me on Twitter at FFBallblast. And as always, I am joined by my co-host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow him on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Be sure, give the show a follow. You're not going to want to miss all of the excitingness, all of the draft extravaganza. We are heading into the first round. Happy Thursday. Happy draft day, Marcus. We are about to get some earth-shattering news, I think, for our dynasty rosters. But this is when the magic happens, baby.
It is, and I'm so excited for the draft. This is probably my favorite day of the year. I always look forward to this day, and then we get to the morning of the draft, and you just start thinking of all the worst possible scenarios that could happen for your team. And all this time that you use to study these prospects, and your team winds up with Kenny Pickett, like at number 20 or something just wild like that.
I literally will walk out. I will walk out of my house and just walk straight to Pittsburgh, and I don't know, chain myself to the door so that Kenny Pickett can't enter the building. If that happens,
he's already there. He's got to already be there,
first,
right?
This is the first time I've ever had true draft night anxiety, like just pure dread. Because last year, I was very excited. I was very high on my guy, Najee Harris, obviously, and he was like speculated to go to the Steelers, and then he went to the Steelers, and I was like, this is fantastic. But now I have to worry about Kenny Pickett. I have to worry about Matt Corral. I don't want to worry about, and like, what if the Steelers do something super ridiculous? Like, trade up, Marcus. I can't handle the pressure. This might be the thing that sends me into a mental breakdown.
Man, I love the draft so much. This is so much fun. Because I have the exact same feelings about, my team, but we don't have to get into that. But don't draft Tyler Smith. All right, let's get into our show today, Kate. We're going to be talking about tight ends, and don't think any tight ends are going to be drafted tonight. So let's draft them on our show. Let's draft the top tight end prospects going into 2022. There's one prospect that I think stands out among the rest. But as always, Kate, I'm going to give you the first pick in our tight end draft.
All right. Of course, the first tight end off the board, it's going to be Trey McBride out of Colorado State. 22 years old, just under 6'4", 246 pounds, running 4.56 40 at his pro day. We know he's got some speed. I mean, Trey McBride is just far and away the most well-rounded tight end in this class. And I don't think there's any other tight end among this entire group that I'm really going to be targeting, even in tight end premium leagues outside of Trey McBride, because he feels like just the safest prospect here. He feels like really the only one that I can imagine me pursuing aggressively. I think he's a good enough athlete. He's just absolutely dominant in terms of his receiving.
Mm-hmm.
They made him a focal point of the offense. And I mean, if he goes to a team that is going to provide him the opportunity to be a focal point of that offense, much like the Falcons did with Kyle Pitts, not to say that they are similar prospects. Obviously, Kyle Pitts, much better athlete, but like Trey McBride, I think he's solid enough to be a bigger part of an offensive scheme than, your typical just straight up blockers.
All right, I got a couple questions for you on McBride. In terms of a prospect coming out of college, do you like him? Like, how do you rank him compared to like Pat Fryermuth, who was a second-round pick, Cole Kmet, who was a second-round pick by the Bears, Dallas Goedert, second-round pick by the Eagles? Is he in that tier of tight end?
I would say he's in that tier of tight end, but like I wouldn't say he's leaps and bounds above. I think that's actually the perfect sort of tier
Okay.
to put him in. Again, not like a killer athlete, but he's a good athlete. And he excelled very much so in what he accomplished at Colorado State in being a featured pass catcher, which obviously we love for fantasy football. Um, Blocking is going to keep tight ends just on the
On the
field
field.
and get
Yep.
them on the field sooner. But much like any of these prospects, we need them to at least show some chops in the receiving game, and Trey McBride very much has those chops. I think he could be a solid asset, but he's
Mhm.
going to need to go to the right team to be able to make even close to the kind of impact that Pat Fryermuth made right out of the gate.
I did see a mock this morning from Peter Schrager at NFL.com where he went 31 to the Bengals. And I think that's really interesting because they obviously lost CJ Uzama in free agency this year. They brought in Hayden Hurst on a 1-year deal. Man, poor Hayden Hurst. Did they draft another tight end in the first round to potentially replace him? But if he ends up with the Bengals, like, is that a fit where all of a sudden you get really excited about Trey McBride?
I wouldn't say super excited. Obviously, we've seen CJ Uzama have some success for fantasy, not on a consistent level. And I don't think there's going to be enough, despite my love for Joe Burrow, I don't think there's going to be enough chops around for all of these guys to be consistently fantasy relevant. We even saw last year it was like either T. Higgins or it was Jamar Chase. We didn't really know who was going to have the big day that week. Um, like Trey McBride, though, I think that makes a really interesting fit for the Bengals, like specifically as a football team. Maybe not the most exciting fit for our fantasy teams because of that. Uh, I would say lack of opportunity to be in a featured role as a receiver. But I think Trey McBride and his blocking abilities. I think that um, just solidifies things further for Joe Burrow, and I think that would be an interesting move because
Yeah,
I do like his abilities as a blocker.
Is there any spot where you'd get really, really excited about him? I mean, I know this is a little hard just to think off the top of the spot, but I like that one just because there's a lot of opportunities there. Anywhere else that you'd be really excited to see him go?
Ugh. Ugh.
There's just not a lot of great landing spots for tight ends, I think, right now.
The Okay, like bear with me here.
Mhm.
And I don't know if this is like outside of the realm of possibility, but what do we think about Trey McBride maybe to a team that like the Panthers, who they were looking for a solid tight end and Ian Thomas and just never really found um the right kind of fit there. I think we saw plenty of flashes from Ian Thomas, but the Panthers are a team that I think could use some young help at the tight end position, and again can benefit from some of his blocking ability.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'd be a really good backup for my guy Tommy Tremble there. Somebody give him a breather or two.
That's fair. That's
No,
fair.
I'd actually that's probably a pretty good fit because what Tommy Tremble does really well is he's a really good blocker. And you can use McBride more as the receiving guy and move him and get him in space. So the Panthers don't have a second or third round pick. However, I expect that to change tonight. I think they're going to trade back a little bit, but yeah, I think that one makes a ton of sense. So I'm up here at pick number 2, and I don't love the options, but I'm going to need a second to make my pick. So as I think about who I'm going to draft here, I want to tell you guys about Blue Nile. Are you guys looking for some fine jewelry for that special woman in your life, but you're having trouble choosing? Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every single budget. And Lord knows that I'm going to need some help because my wife helping with the draft this weekend with all the people that are coming over and how many hours I'm going to spend in front of the TV. Need to maybe help her out a little bit. So on BlueNile.com, you can easily navigate thousands of fine jewelry options at every single price point And this Mother's Day, give mom something she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Cowboys listeners will get $50 off $500. This podcast exclusive is good through Mother's Day. Use promo code Locked On, and that's good for Locked On Cowboys and Locked On Dynasty listeners. I should mention that. I know I said Locked On Cowboys, but go again. Promo code Locked On. Plus, every single order is insured. It ships free and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. All right, Kate. Second pick. I'm going to go Greg Dulcich, tight end from UCLA. Pretty clearly the tight end 2 in terms of consensus on draft boards. Like if you look at the big draft media people between Mel Kiper, Todd McShay, Daniel Jeremiah, Dane Brugler, one of the better receiving threats in this class last year had 725 yards in 11 games. For his career, averaged 17.6 yards per reception. He's a vertical threat. He can't block a lick. So he's going to have to be used as a receiver in the NFL. I think he goes sometime in the 3rd round, and I think there's a little bit of receiving upside here.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me just very generally of the way we were viewing Evan Ingram coming out of the draft, just like a pure receiving tight end, like maybe just too big to actually play like the pure wide receiver position, but a decent athlete. But I mean, that's definitely where he's going to find his niche. Are there any concerns though? If like at least with Evan Ingram, we had the draft capital that kept him on the field and kept him involved very early on. The lack of offensive weapons there got him, involved early on, despite that lack of pass blocking ability. Is there any concern here though, that maybe without that draft capital to help push him to the front of the tight end depth charts wherever he ends up, is there a concern that, that lack of pass blocking ability is going to affect his standing at all?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because he could go late 2nd round and he could go 4th round, and I think it makes a big difference. And because he's not a blocker, as you mentioned, we might not see him very early in his career, right? Like there's a good chance that he gets with a team that just doesn't like to play him on certain downs, and he's only limited to 25 snaps a game, and that's certainly not ideal. It's why if you need a tight end in your dynasty drafts, you better get Trey McBride, because everybody else has major, major question marks.
Yeah, it's definitely it's definitely slim pickings.
Yeah, yeah, it's not great. All right, you are up here at number 3.
I hate tight ends, man. I love tight ends. I think they're so fun, but this tight end class is just not fun.
No.
It's all it all feels like a big giant question mark. So here I'll go for some size and upside. I'll take Delanie Woods.
Good pick.
I think we're looking here at just pure upside,
athleticism. Really. You're hoping this is the next great receiver, right? Or receiving tight end.
That's what you're hoping with Delanie Woods. Now, the question marks here across the board. You're gonna have plenty of just wonderment about what is his game gonna translate to at the NFL level, but he's got the size. He's 6'7". He's a big, he's a big boy, Marcus. He's a very big boy.
Massive.
In his final year, he played with Oklahoma State. I think he was originally a quarterback. Is that right?
Yeah, he came in as a quarterback, moved to tight end, and then because they had some other prospects there, had to transfer to Virginia. He actually played this entire season on a pretty badly high ankle sprain, so we didn't even get to see him at full strength.
And it put up 598 yards, 8 receiving touchdowns. I think there's lots of upside here, especially, if there's going to be a guy who comes out and, maybe doesn't necessarily, run the most routes. Like, I think there's plenty of opportunity and, upside alone for Delanie Woods in terms of it just maybe right off the bat, touchdown production.
Mhm.
Like this is a guy that I would love, especially, if you're in a dynasty best ball league, this is a guy that I think, just based on size alone and upside, he's going to be one that intrigues me, especially right off the bat, just from a size perspective.
I also think you're hoping for like a AlieCox type of player, right? Where he's just so much bigger than everybody. And if he gets opportunities, he could be a real red zone option right away. Uh, he's a long ways away from being a polished player. And that's why he's probably going to fall to the 3rd or 4th round. But again, you're taking upside.
On the note of like switching positions too, the fact that he did switch positions, like if he turns out to be a solid tight end, whatever team that drafts him might actually be getting a deal here, because he still has some of that, development to go. As everybody knows, when you see players, changing positions, there's a bit of a transition period, and maybe we see Delanie Woods benefit from that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, don't disagree. All right, I'm up at here, pick 4, and it's already getting really, really thin. I'm going to go with Cade Otton, a tight end from Washington, who's really only a blocking tight end right now. I actually compare him to Foster Moreau, who the Raiders took in the 4th round, 2019. But I think he's somebody who's going to get on the field early because of his blocking ability. And we've actually seen this path be very successful in the NFL. A good example is Dalton Schultz in Dallas, right? First year, 2 years, you're really just a blocker, but you are on the field a lot. You're playing a lot of special team snaps. And then by year 3, they start to give you more chances in the passing game. And like we've seen with Schultz, has been a top 5 tight end over the last 2 years. So if you can just get an opportunity to be on the field early, I think Otten is a good pick. However, unless you are in a super deep dynasty league, he's probably somebody you don't need to draft, but just kind of monitor him because I do think he's got some upside.
Yeah, it's never good when your comp is a guy that's like probably available in waivers, in dynasty leagues. But I feel
the same way though about Foster Moreau. Like I feel like because Foster Moreau has played a lot, once he gets his opportunity and his chance, I think he's going to be very successful. So again, this path has worked out before, but you don't need to draft Cade Otton right now.
That's fair. That's very
fair. There you go. We have a couple more guys to talk about before we finish up the show, but I wanted to tell you guys about BetOnline. BetOnline has everything you need for your sports betting experience. You can bet on the NFL draft. You can bet on the NBA playoffs. We've got baseball. We've got hockey. BetOnline, it will offer you all the latest odds and info. So go to BetOnline right now to see all of the latest scores, stats, info. We use BetOnline, placed a couple of BetOnline or a couple of bets on BetOnline for the NFL draft. Quay Walker, first linebacker drafted tonight. Come on, baby. That's the big one here. So shout out to BetOnline for giving us those props and those lines. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Kate, one more pick. Is there one more tight end that you want to talk about?
I'll go ahead and this isn't my favorite pick. I think there's definitely, again, some more room and some tweaks that this guy has to make at the next level. But I'll roll with Isaiah Likely, tight end out of Coastal Carolina, 22 years old. The issue, I think, with Isaiah Likely, it mostly comes down to his frame at this point. Yeah. He's just a little langly, if you will, if that's the technical term.
Sure.
He's 6'4.5", measured in at the combine, 245 pounds. So just a little bit more slight in that frame than you'd really want in terms of a guy that might be, respected as a blocker at the next level. Like he's just not, he's not got that beef, but like the production profile from a receiving standpoint is totally there. Ranked 4th in yards per route run among tight ends last year, 2nd in receiving yards. This guy he produced, but again, it comes down to maybe like if he he can put on some muscle at the next level, I think he'd have a real opportunity there. I like him as an overall around prospect, but
Yeah.
I think again, it just has to come down to, can he maybe build on that frame a little bit? Because if he does, I think he's not the worst blocker in the world. He's not
No, I
great,
think he's a
but
pretty decent blocker, actually.
yeah, he's I think going to probably succeed at the next level if given the opportunity, if we see him just gain a little bit of size.
I will say, of all the tight ends that I watched this year, Kate, I probably like his tape the best. Honestly, like the stuff that he can do in the receiving game is really good. He's so dynamic after the catch. Over the last 2 years, 1,500 yards and 17 touchdowns. He's the most dynamic guy once he has the ball in his hands. I think on the field, he's a really good player. My problem with him is he's just not a great athlete. He came in under 250 pounds. He ran a 4.82 40-yard dash, which is, oof, that's bad for an undersized tight end. But we have seen
It's bad for an undersized tight end, but when you're looking at, some of these guys who are playing, like truly playing tight end and not like the Kyle Pitts who are
yes,
playing, on the outside, that might not be an issue for him at the next level. Like when you're playing some of these guys like out of the slaughter and seem like that might not be a huge issue for Isaiah Likely, especially I don't think it's as big a deal for him, especially because I don't think we necessarily saw that like lack of true spark in athleticism affect his production in college. Obviously, totally different game when you get to the NFL level, but I think he's still good enough. He's not Kyle Pitts, but he's good enough that I don't think it's going to be a huge
right.
hindrance.
We,
I
we
don't know.
have
He's
seen
kind of a wild card.
we have seen tight ends that have been slow and undersized be successful. Jordan Reed is a really good example from Florida, played with Washington for several years. Even Brevin Jordan last year for the Texans. Now, I know he didn't have massive numbers, but somebody that flashed at least a little bit. I'm banking on Likely if he goes in the 4th, 5th round because of what he can do after the catch, because he gets open all the time. I think he's at least somebody worth keeping an eye on because I do really like his tape. One more guy that I'll pick, Charlie Kolar from Iowa State, somebody that I actually really like in this class. Gives me some Cole Kmet vibes. He is just a massive tight end, 6'6.5", 252 pounds, ran a 4.62 40-yard dash at his pro day. I mean, just an incredible athlete, plus very productive at Iowa State. 3 straight seasons of at least 590 receiving yards and at least 6 touchdowns. The guy just gets open and catches everything. Not super dynamic after the catch. Not a good blocker at all, but somebody who I think is going to be a 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick. It's going to be on the field because he's just so big and so athletic.
Yeah, I think that's
You're just
fair.
out on this tight end class, Kate. Just go ahead and say it.
I'm out. Just and like of course, like I said when we were talking about Trey McBride, I'm not saying don't draft any of these tight ends in your rookie drafts, especially in your tight end premium leagues. But these are not going to be players that I'm going to be seeking out in my drafts.
I
Just
agree.
not a huge amount of upside there, but I mean, would I be surprised if a couple of these guys can be intermittently fantasy relevant with how volatile the position is? No.
Yes.
But just, I'm not going to trade up for one of these guys. I'll put it that way.
The only guy that we are really interested in here is Trey McBride. Maybe there'll be another one of these guys drafted into a landing spot that we really like, and they get drafted higher. Then we can kind of adjust our rankings, but McBride's the only one right now. And then just keep an eye on Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kolar, Cade Otton, Greg Dulcich, to see where they land. We can have a conversation about them. So, all right, that is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. We want to remind you that it's Fonte Mac no matter what. Draft day reference. We'll be back on Monday to break down all the action from the NFL draft. Matt and Ryan back on Tuesday and Wednesday. You can follow the show at Locked On Dynasty. Check us out on YouTube where we post our shows every single week. Follow Kate at FFBobblast, and I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy the draft. We'll see you guys next time.